everyone, how you doing? This is Sharon Combs with UCDI Leadership and Do Something Daily LLC. We're here with knowledge or nonsense here on the first night of the first presidential debate of 2020. So what we're going to talk about today are process. Hey, and I'm back. Yeah, we're going to talk about process improvements tonight. Right there is a process that can be improved. See, right there.
There you go. There you go.
So I want to thank Chad Bliss and Wendy Brazel for joining us tonight. Donnie Payne will join us a little later. And yeah, let's just talk about process improvement. What is it? Why is it such a buzzword within the sterilization industry? I think it's a buzzword in many industries. That's why we have so many Six Sigmas and different methodologies that allow people to improve processes. But what is process improvement as it relates to sterile processing?
Well, I think go ahead. I think there's a couple things like, SPD in nature has been a growing profession, right? Back in the old days, it was, more of a glorified dishwasher is what they kind of thought down there. And because I don't think the managers or the C-suite level or people like that really thought there was value down there. So I think the process, as it's grown, the education that people are getting, the more knowledge is there, people start looking at the process of things for speed, for expertise, for patient safety, for infection prevention. So, every one of those things, as people understood what SPD really did and how it impacts the facility, I think they looked at all the processes, whether it's, indicator biologicals, whether it's, employee, proficiencies, all those processes, everybody took a hard look at. So when you're talking process improvement, I mean, SPD's, prime time, because I think there's always a better way to turn sets, and manage and monitor basically the output of what the department's doing.
All right, Wendy, as a travel consultant, someone that they bring in to look at the department, when someone says to you process improvement, what are some of the things that run through your mind just immediately?
Well, I always like to look at their SOPs. We start the process of their SOPs to make sure that they're following guideline standards, whether it be AMI, ANSI, ARN, and so we can deliver success.
All right. So out there in sterile processing world, as you guys are joining us tonight, we are doing this early so that people have an opportunity to look at the debate. What are some of the things you think about when you think of just improving your processes? Like, what are things that you look at? If you could put that in the chat box, we would really love to see some of your comments on what you think process improvement is. And so when you say things like ANSI and AMI, can we just take a moment and drill down for someone who's looking like, is there one process that comes to mind? Like, hey, let's look at this. Like maybe you look at turnaround time, maybe you look at throughput. Like, what is like one or two things that generally may need some tweaking?
The quality, quality versus quantity, communication.
Excellent.
Is a big one. And how do we increase productivity and efficiency?
Yeah, that's great. I know that SIBS definitely has some benchmarks and some things that they use, but I'm sure many people have that question. How about you, Chad? What are some things you think of right off?
Well, I think about the probably the gap analysis, to start off, right? It's hard to really know how to improve your process unless you know where you're at right now, or if you're having a pain point within your department, or maybe the OR feels some pain and they judge the SPD's turnaround time or set proficiency or accuracy, and then so you kind of do that, the gap analysis to kind of see where you measure up and where you're going, and seeing if you are following, the AMI guidelines or the ARN guidelines, or if it's ASC, the surgical tech guidelines and those things too. So that's probably my first process improvement kind of starting point when I think of process improvement is going there.
All right. So before we dig down into the things that we know might need improved, What are some informal things? What are some informal processes? Are there, what, if any, are some informal processes within sterile processing? Maybe some that
Communication.
the communication.
Communications is the key. It's the informal, but is very common.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, Wendy, when you show up, like when you're traveling around, you get on an assignment, do you look at, the huddle, for instance, and look at that communication and see if they're actually giving good feedback up and down? I mean, what do you think there? I mean, I've seen that happen quite a bit. What's the takeaway from there?
It's I like to see what they're talking about the processes, the communication between the OR and SPD. Every morning the account I'm on now, we have a huddle every morning with the OR staff, and then I also have a huddle with my staff as well, so we can go over we actually go 4 days in advance, just talking about things, turnovers, communication, efficiency, productivity.
Okay. When you guys, when you're passing that information, is it like top down, or do you bring it down and then trust the rest of your team to distribute information when we do communication?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Donnie, how about you? When you think about communication as an informal process, are you top down? Like, is it just you give instructions? Or do you dispense it out to different people and allow them to go to different areas?
I figure a way to communicate through the right resources. So that's usually the best way for me, because it's kind of hard to go individual to each individual person. So you'll find those people that you know will be able to deliver the information needed to the rest of the team. So that's what I usually rely on.
That's wisdom. That's wisdom. All right. So we talked about process improvement. I'm going to call it PI, if that's okay with you guys, for a little bit. I'll just be like PI.
That sounds official.
Yeah, I know, right? It sounds important. So when you talk about PI, no, seriously, we always say process improvement, and it is a buzzword. Is it too much of a buzzword? Is it something that you think that we use sometimes just to? Yeah, I know this. Yeah, hot seat right here. Yeah, like there you go, Sharon.
It is used quite a bit.
I do think a lot of people use it as a just a little bit too much, right? Process improvement. Everything's in the process improvement, right? They'll talk about it, they'll report on it. But what are the nuts and bolts behind it? And there's really some, KPI metrics. We were talking to Wendy earlier, and she was talking about Lean, Six Sigma, and that kind of stuff. There's real good, benchmarks in there that give you quantified data. But I do think people just use, we're in a process improvement deal, but are they really making process, or are they just spinning their wheels and talking about it? You know what I mean? I've seen that where it kind of gets a little stuck in the mud, right?
Yeah, and that's what we call real talk, being authentic. Sometimes we do use buzzwords, or sometimes buzzwords are used and it makes it sound official, but are we really seeing process improvement? Is it actually, what's the word I want to say, quantifiable?
Right.
Like, is it something that can actually be measured, or is it still a conversation that's just sounds good? And so, Wendy, when you, what do you think? Do you think that process improvement, I know when you say it, it means something, but do you feel like sometimes it's just thrown out as a term, but there's no real activity behind it?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of follow-up with the process improvements that I see a lot of times when I go on accounts. They're talking about the process improvements, but they don't follow up.
All right. Well, let's segue onto that. Like, so what are some ways that we can follow up with PI?
Well, may I say something first?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Before Wendy. So I see it a bit differently because I work usually in administration. So process improvement, there's like never ending cycle, because there's always some new initiative or agenda, or someone coming in, putting their spin on what needs to happen, or what should be prioritized at the time. So I think most of the time we do end up in like a never ending process improvement initiative because we don't get the opportunity to completely close out one task before we go on to the next.
Facts.
But that's sometimes it can be growth, or sometimes it could leave us stagnant. So that's what we do have to figure out, which route we're taking through several phases of the projects.
I'd like to ask a question that is kind of off the beaten path, but it really speaks to your ability to help your clients, for all of us. When there are process improvement recommendations, here we go. When there are process improvement recommendations, and you know that these are the AMI standards, you know that these are the recommendations, best practices, and you're recommending them to clients, whether they're ASCs, hospitals, agencies, whatever they are, and you make those recommendations, what are some of the common barriers? And I know, like, this is a little off the beaten path, but I'm wondering if maybe if we can identify some of the common barriers that decision makers encounter as they're trying to get movement on these process improvements, then maybe we can help them navigate these barriers. Just, so you have a CNO or you have a director of surgical services. Maybe you have a manager, but they're wanting to see the process improve. And the recommendations have been made. They're supported by quantifiable data. And what are some of the barriers? Like, what are some of the hindrances to seeing that follow through that you all have seen in your time? Just
space and budget are the two major barriers when it comes to process improvements.
Okay, space and budget. Go ahead.
A lot of the sterile processing departments are very small. They just don't have the space when we're coming in and trying to implement the process improvements. And then the budget as well. A lot of times when you're doing it, we try to minimize spending the money, but a lot of times in order to do the process improvements, you gotta put out the money. And right now during COVID, I mean, budgets are slim.
And I think people too. I think you have a lot of folks that are used to doing the same thing every day, and they don't want to change that process. So sometimes I think people are that next level. I've been here for 20 years, is how we've done it. I don't want to change, or they say they're going to change and they're on the team and they're ready to go. And as soon as you get away for a minute, they go right back to what's comfortable to them and what's used to. So the process gets held up there too. I also think that, the process mapping is huge there, right? When we're talking about quantifiable, if you do a process map of where the process is now, right, and then implement some changes and do your process map, how the changes, and show how it's actually benefiting, the department or the OR turnaround or what have you on each one of those things. If you don't break down the SPD and the processes with all that mapping, I think it's hard to get people to buy in. So sometimes it's got to be another visual thing. And like Wendy says, to get the money, I think you got to map it out and show it sometimes. And then maybe they release it because they can actually see the data, or maybe they see savings in another realm, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. How do you find money here today and push over there? So I think that's huge too.
Yeah, it's definitely the buy-in. Yeah,
buy-in. Buy-in from who? Is that buy-in from the staff or
from
buy-in
the appropriate
from
stakeholders? I shouldn't say just appropriate stakeholders, because as Wendy and Chad both spoke, there's the space, you have to deal with budget, then you have to map it out to convince people along the way that they should support every single phase of the project. So then you have to find the right players at the right time, so you can continue the buy-in. That's why, to me, process mapping is so important, because your players may change for different phases. So you have to see who do we need to initiate here? Who do we need to engage for this section? Because that also keeps you moving, and other people don't kind of get burned out or bored in the project because they're only being engaged for a certain phase.
Yeah.
All right.
And I've seen that too, where you'll have one department or one, like say classification of somebody within that. Like maybe you have the money counter, right, that's worried about budget, right? They don't really understand the infection prevention process, right?
They make
a decision like, no, we can't afford it, right? Until we have an infection, then of course we can afford everything. Right? So
Yes, immediately.
Getting that message delivered to the right people for the support to kind of champion the entire overall process improvement is a challenge, I think. And so, I think all those, whether you're talking people, you're talking budget and space. I mean, you look at IFUs nowadays, right? And all the automated washers you got to have, because it's almost impossible to do them manually, and keep up and get something turned around. Oh, and they're like, well, that's $80,000 for the new Medivator this, right? And so then you're saying, oh, we ain't in the budget for that. Well, then how do you spend the money to bring a consultant in because you're trying to fix a pain point? The pain point really is a piece of equipment that needs to be implemented to do that process, and then they don't want to spend the money that side. So sometimes I've seen facilities throw money on the left side and forget that they're going to have to spend it on the right side. So, but you're right. The different layers of management, sometimes it's hard to get them in one room and get them focused on the
all at once. Yes.
All at once. Yep, exactly.
All right. So, with that, and we're getting a buy-in, getting everybody on one page, getting things moving forward. Definitely, if they spend, because you spend money on the third parties, which third parties are awesome. Yay to SIPs, yay to American Surgical, yay to CS Assist. However, a lot of times, if you will just go ahead and bite the bullet and invest into that department, you do see a ROI. Definitely, like what you were saying with the motivators, and something's going on within your scopes. If you enlarge your capacity for that and you improve the processes there, hospitals, they're courting these physicians. You want the physicians to be able to do their procedures at your facility. And so, you want to be able to court them. You want to be able to court with confidence when you're working with these facilities. And so, when you're working with these physicians, and so that's something that one can do as well. I agree with all the barriers mentioned. Someone says sometimes they bring consultants in and still push back. Yes, that's what I was saying. Some of the barriers.
That's what I was sitting here thinking. Someone will bring a Wendy in or a Chad in, have them come in for 2-3 weeks, 13 weeks, do all these reports, meet with every person in the C-suite, and even people from infection control, whatever department they feel like really needs to meet with the people, and then sit on it. They're just like, well, maybe that's really not the advice we needed. So, people, you really should allow the experts to do what they are experts in. And then if you don't feel like the expert is the person you need for another phase of the project, that's fine. But if you brought someone in to actually consult you in a certain area, go ahead and utilize what they provided, the resources and even recommendations they have provided, so that you can see some improvement or at least get some return on your investment.
All right. So we're going to take 1 minute before we go to a commercial break. And again, I'm going to ask, why process improvement? I know it's why process improvement, because we want things to be better. We want to improve the process, hey, process improvement. What are some tangible benefits that people can expect when they engage in process improvement? From your area of expertise, what are some tangible benefits, like real-time benefit, that someone can expect when they
increase productivity and efficiency?
Increase productivity and efficiency. So that's definitely a bottom line hitter, because you can support the volume.
I think a lot of it too is the cost avoidance or the cost prevention. There's a lot of money I think's wasted in just moving the wheels. And I think if you look at that process improvement, you can actually see some money coming back in the budget, whether it's, reutilizing your FTEs correctly, and you just get a lot of knowledge out of it. So I think that's the process improvement really does hit the bottom line when you're spending money, because time is money, right? We've said that a million times on here. And if you got people being inefficient, you got people not really, focusing on the task that's really important. The SPD OR gets, sometimes during the day, gets so dysfunctional that the process is broken, right? Because it's like, hey, we're on this process, we're trying to get our sets done, we're not going to IUSS, we're going to do this, and all of a sudden, boom, something emergency happens and everything stopped, and we wasted 2 hours chasing our tail trying to look for one instrument that somebody needed for something, right? And it wasn't in the plan. And so how do you manage kind of a little bit of the chaos with being efficient at the same time becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Ms. Payne? Have you noticed, what are some of the payoffs, the tangible payoffs?
I would say efficiency as one of the things that immediately, if people actually implement some of the recommendations, Yeah, you can start seeing little glimpses of hope all along the path as you start to implement certain things, and those things end up having like a domino effect on other processes as you go through the implementation phases.
Yep. Don't you get a little bit of a culture growth too? Don't you think? Like as people start to, buy into the program, the process again. But everybody all of a sudden is looking to make the process better. They got buy-in. That culture kind of changes. The new staff that comes in kind of adopts that, and I think it's just a good momentum.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I think no, I love it. I love it. Great minds think alike. When that happens, you do get the buy-in. The morale actually increases a little bit. And anytime morale increases, productivity as a byproduct increases as well. Your turnover slows down. I mean, if you're working at a place where morale is high, those people aren't looking for jobs every day. You understand? So,
absolutely.
I mean, there are things and those may be intangible benefits, but they are benefits nonetheless that have an effect on the bottom line. Luane said leverage buying power by consolidating inventory between multiple departments. Okay.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
That is spot on. Exactly. I do think though, when you're talking culture, right, and you're talking productivity, right, not only efficiency, but if the department is happy and they're rolling, people, you don't learn SPD overnight. Right. So if people stay in their roles, they stay in their department, and you continue in that process, they gain a lot of knowledge, right? And you keep the good people. If you don't get good process improvement, you don't give great work environments and those kind of things, then people want to leave. And if they stay, then they continue to be there, and then knowledge grows. They have more expertise. You save, my world, rookies, young SPD staff don't understand all the equipment, so they have a tendency to break more equipment, right? So the staff stays, right, and then they get really knowledgeable, and they can care and handle scopes better, and they have this good morale, or they have an understanding that this is a fragile, piece of equipment that's needed. They care and handle it better too. And so I think people that stay in the department, their knowledge base goes, you're saving tons on repair as well, and sterility. I mean, their efficiency of building sets is quicker. They get the sets turned around faster. You don't have missed sets, or you're not popping 3 other trays and looking for instruments because they weren't in there. They're not chasing a tray down, so OR is faster. I think multiple departments end up winning that way too.
Excellent. We're going to take a small break. When we come back, I want to ask you guys what are some of the best practices for process improvement, and see you guys in a moment. All right, and we're back. What are some scopes need to be treated like NICU babies? All right, they do with that type of care and kids gloves. You're right, exactly. What are some of the best practices for process improvement? It's a buzzword, but what are some of the best practices associated with process improvement? Like
new technology.
So you're incorporating the technology. When you say new technology, can you expound on it, Wendy? What does it mean?
Like a tracking system. You're tracking.
Yep, tracking systems. All the new automated reprocessors are there too. I think one of the other things that I was reading earlier is identifying the improvement opportunity. Right. So when you're talking about it, what is it? What are we actually really trying to improve, right? And what pain point or problem are we going to fix in that process improvement? So I think those are some of the key factors that you got to have in that.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm gonna piggyback a little off of Chad. So I'll say standardization. As many things that can look the same for the staff and anyone that might come in. So that would be if it's the pick tickets, if it's just the even the bodies of the emails, whatever you can do to make everything similar for everyone in the department, to standardize, so that if someone in the OR is looking, someone in sterile processing, someone in HR, no matter where everyone is, if they know exactly where they should go to in certain spots to know where they're involved in the process, makes it easier if you standardize as much as possible throughout the entire facility.
Being consistent. Yes.
Yeah, being consistent with all of your templates, with the locations of certain things, whatever you can, makes it a lot easier.
All right. So what we're doing right now is we're talking about best practices for process improvement. What I like to do is I'm going to actually, we're going to be joined by an individual here. Mr. Perkins is joining us, and we may have one more guest that'll be joining us shortly. But what I like to do now is we're going over these practices, and one of the practices that I see on the blueprint is to set quantifiable goals. This is the first time, and this is the first time doing this, so yay! I am going to give each person something to speak on. I'm going to ask them to speak to a certain part. And so, as a best practice, it says set quantifiable goals. So, set clear goals. I'm going to ask Wendy to speak to that on prioritizing the customer. I'm going to ask Mr. Chad Bliss to speak on that. And on incorporating technology, Luane has just joined us. So, guess what? It's all you, sir. So, Wendy, when we're talking about setting the quantifiable and clear goals, even before you can do before you can really implement your process improvement, you have to know where you're going. What are some ways that you make sure that you implement those, that you set those quantifiable goals?
You start out with an assessment so you can set your deliverables.
Okay. Okay, start out with assessment so you can set the deliverables. Once you have those deliverables, do you share them? Like, who do you share them with? Like, and I would like for everyone out there to know this is called off the cuff right here. That's one thing about knowledge or nonsense. Yeah, we're testing the knowledge today. Who do you share that with? Is that with the upline, downline? Is that with the necessary stakeholders? How do we share those quantifiable goals?
With the upline, C-suite.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And so, Chad, as it relates to the customers, how do you?
Yeah, I think when you're talking SPD, you got multiple different customers. Obviously, you got the OR, right? So you got the OR. That's probably your main one. That's your big one. But you got the clinics throughout the hospital. You got the GI lab. You got a budget. They're a customer as well. Patients ultimately a customer. But I think there's many times I've been in SPD, right? In the process, clinic sends down something and they want that sterilized, and then you guys got like a 48-hour turnaround, or maybe the SPD is actually sterilizing for a facility down the street or one of their sister facilities, and those things in that process. There's many times where I see people standing there at the line, and they brought it in 2 days ago and the night shift processed it, but no one ever knew on the day shift where this instrument is or when it was processed. And so they spent a lot of time looking for this instrument that was processed so they can get it back in that clinic and use it. I think understanding your customer and the process for each customer is going to be a little different. The SPD, OR, that's real time in the morning, you're rocking and rolling. That's first priority. GI lab's probably going to be finishing up in the afternoon, reprocessing scopes, turnaround is going to be there. And I think clinics, they try to fit them in. And I think you can deliver or develop a process where they have set times where they're picking up and delivering it, like say 2:00 in the afternoon or right around 3:00 for tomorrow. It helps them prioritize like inventory thresholds and how many scopes they have and caseload. Right. So they can plan and prep for that instead of kind of being, hey, we scheduled this case and then you're in panic because you didn't really have your process down on sterility for certain equipment that you may or may not need.
All right. Excellent. And Luane looks like he stepped out for just a moment. And I just want to share this. Oh, go ahead, Luane.
He's back.
Yeah. So my question was incorporating technology, I believe, right?
Yes.
Well, I think in a healthcare setting, where we have some clear wins is when we use the interconnectivity between different systems. As an example, the scheduling system in the operating room, many have the capability to speak to the tracking system and cell processing, which also has certain modules that can speak to the tracking system or instrument repair module for the repair vendor. If we can sync these technologies together, we can have one database of efficiency. Instead of trying to manage multiple documents or multiple spreadsheets. Many managers that I speak to are still in 2020, have multiple report files in Excel, some in Word, when many of these automated. You know, we said before, the Microsoft Suite has so many variables, so much, so much so that we already paid for many of these programs. They just get underutilized. I can really look and understand what technology you have at your fingertips and how they can best be incorporated without managing multiple windows of the same sort of feed.
All right. So we heard from technology, we heard from prioritizing the customer and setting the quantifiable goals. I wanted to ask you guys out there in SPD world, CSPD Nation, what are some ways that you identify improvement opportunities? We're going, earlier today, she said, you have an assessment, but for those who don't have a consultant come in and do an assessment or have somebody within your own team even do an assessment, those of you who are working day to day within the sterile processing, how do you identify improvement opportunities? How do you find out, what, this process may need some tweaking. It may need some work. What are some things that you all do out there in the world in-house? Feel free to share this video, but let us know some of the practices and the things you do. Educators out there, what are some things you do to identify improvement opportunities? And when you find those pain points, how do you communicate them to your upline? So I just wanted to throw that to you guys out there in the SPD world. Let's see what some of you all say out there.
Hey, Sharon, I know,
yes, sir.
There's a generation of SPD techs, and I happen to be from that generation, who we have burn marks to prove how long we've been working in sterile processing. And these burn marks come from that sterilizer before they made those mittens or those gloves. So maybe we need to do a art gallery of show your scar, because it's serious, before those, and in some cases, unfortunately, you can't understand or recognize an opportunity to repair until you recognize it's broken, that something is in disarray, or you're working 8-hour shift and you're always under duress because something's just not right. So that's also the power of a consultant, someone coming from a very high level view to a place they're unfamiliar with. We tend to dive down deeper into the details.
True. And then it becomes more plain. It's easier because you know what? One of the things too within, I think when people bring in third parties, sometimes I'm going back to barriers, guys. Sometimes the fact that it's a third party itself is like a barrier. Some people have to get past that. But really, a third party doesn't mean it's a barrier. You just can be so busy and you have so many things on your plate that bringing those fresh eyes, and there's somebody that's doing exactly what you need done. And so that really frees up your time and helps you be able to drive the things that you need to drive. If you need to drive revenue, if you need to, like I said, court physicians, if you need to do something else, you're working on construction, there are other areas you can drive, and that third party is actually help. Arlene says they're always doing assessments. They're always doing assessments, and that the frontline staff come up with some of their best process improvements. And so for the rest of you out there, let us know some of the things that you do because what helps you identify some of your pain points? Is it something that you only talk about in the break room, or do you actually bring it up in a huddle? Do you share it with your upline? Okay, so back to process improvement with the panel. I want to ask, how do you obtain stakeholder buy-in? I know we can show them the bottom line, but how do you do that? Are there some nuances? Is there some fairy dust that we have, some magic fairy dust, that gets the stakeholder buy-in? What are ways that we actually get stakeholder buy-in?
Well, I think, go ahead, Chad.
I was going to say, lots of times just asking them for feedback, right? Just asking them how they feel the process is going. And once they have a chance to voice that, they kind of, if you're listening to them, it gives them that sense that you care about what they want, right? So if you're asking the OR feedback on a regular basis, they get a little more buy-in that you guys actually care downstairs and we're trying to improve that process. I think that's probably the first one, is just asking for feedback.
Asking for feedback. Excellent. Anyone else?
I would agree with that. I think in order to get their buy-in, sometimes you have to let them in, right? You have to open that door to SPD and invite them down. that woman who's a CFO or that guy who's a CFO, they're in that position for a reason, for a particular talent. And if you can leverage that talent to your benefit, it's a mutual win. So I always say, have an open house in your sales processing department. Bring them down. Let them take a actual tour. Let them see the nuts and bolts of the department, so they can have a great appreciation to find out where that dollar is being spent and utilized. So let them in.
I want to just take this moment for my managers out there. Karen says she monitors each area with QA forms and look for areas of opportunity and focus on those. Arlene says white paper standards that state the regulations. That's something that she can use to vet it. The one you're saying, let them in. For the managers out there, like I said, nationwide, we have managers out there nationwide. What are some ways that they can let them in a way that, because sometimes, guys, I believe in human behavior. I know we're a process driven area, but human behavior, sometimes people may be afraid. And so people try to cover mistakes or cover what they feel like could be held against them. So what are some ways that they can let them in without necessarily, without cutting their throat? Is that coffee? Is that getting on the calendar and maybe saying, hey, these are some areas I've noticed trends in? Well, Chad, LaWayne, anyone, what are some ways that people can do that?
Well, one way, two examples, and then I'll let the panel take it. One way, pull the IUSS report, right? And you can display to the team how, although SPD is not directly responsible for what is being IUSS in most cases, but we still have a share in that decision. And by inviting them down to see how much we directly impact patient care, we can get their attention. Another great way to do it is what I call to have an ice cream social. And that may be a little different now than COVID, right?
Yeah, no ice cream. Yeah.
We would have ice cream
buffets.
We would invite folks down to the cafeteria, and my department would honor the vascular team, or we would honor. We would pick a department and just serve them ice cream. Is a mode to solicit conversation. You just want to start at hello. So two ways: have a common joint cause or denominator, or issue that's a major pain point, or create an environment to have a conversation.
Excellent.
As well, a suggestion box. That a way people put in their suggestions anonymously.
All right. That's good. Suggestion box, ice cream socials. Oh, go ahead, Chad.
Well, so I'll just tell a little story. So I was involved with a large facility early on, and we had a once a month Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And basically it was a process improvement, and you had OR, you had SPD, you had, administration in this room, and they just picked a topic or a pain point and set a goal. And they all worked in the room together, and we kind of just, we took sticky notes and threw ideas all over the walls, and then picked the process we thought we wanted to attack and developed a good process. We actually had some pretty good process improvement, like teachers, educators in there that kind of had us do almost like a game, right? So basically they said, okay, here's the task, right? So you have to work OR. You have an OR person, SPD person, administration, and we have to make 35 airplanes, paper airplanes look identical. And then you had to have a quality control manager at the end. And then you had like 3 teams, and you try to see how fast you get these done, and then have your quality measures, right? So it built this team collaboration kind of fun, and it almost building little paper airplanes as a team together. Then you can kind of take it back, that same kind of process or mindset when you went back to SPD on Monday. And you did that on Monday, and actually had to sterilize instruments and get the process turned around. So it was kind of a really neat event, and you could really watch people open up when we did that. I wish it was my idea. I was just fortunate to be part of it. It was really neat to see, because everybody felt like there was no manager, there was no CFO in the room. You were all just people trying to get tasks and do best practices. That was really what it was. It was kind of neat.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun and exciting. And it sounds like you got to know the people that you worked with as well.
Yeah, and it goes back. It was Lean Six Sigma kind of thought process, right? And so when you're talking about doing a process improvement, you had these teams, and then you broke it down like how you how you guys, the quality control manager, kept sending back, these airplanes because they didn't meet the criteria and but couldn't tell why, right? And then you talked about it afterwards, right? And it really just let people really open up. But the Six Sigma did really, work on that process improvement there.
Well, Chad, or you can get a roll of wet toilet paper and go boss's car. If you really want their attention.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that too.
You might get fired or arrested, but you'll definitely have their attention.
Exactly.
That might not give you the ROI you wanted. So
yeah, let's stick to making solutions for their pain point.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
Wendy, I know that you Six Sigma is something that you are familiar with, and that is definitely a part of your initials. How do you find Six Sigma relates as it comes with process improvement? Like, what are some of the ways that Six Sigma correlates? Again, it's a buzzword, and so that's why I like to ask these questions so we can hear it not just in specialization language, but also just in natural language.
Oh, hold on. Oh.
You know what? Let's Mark says, got that. Let's see what Karen says. Follow through. If there's a problem, you tell the customer before they tell you. However, have a solution when applicable. Donnie, can you expound on that? When it says
so for
problem.
Yeah, for us, one of the things we really try to do is whenever there is a situation, so we try to identify the pain points of the customer. And with that, so we reverse engineer or just provide whatever solutions we have available. But from this, I think she's saying when there is an issue or something comes up, so if we know that a case was delayed or a trade didn't make it or whatever happened, that we inform the customer with whatever the situation is or someone before they bring it to us. We can't just run and kind of duck our heads in the sand and hope that the situation blows over. We need to go ahead, address it, and come up with a solution for whatever is the best option for the problem.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so that's what she's doing. Arlene is saying Six Sigma helps break down an issue to find a solution. And I agree with what Karen said.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like, sometimes we put off or we procrastinate with a conversation, and because it's going to be awkward. But putting it off doesn't mean it's not going to be awkward. It just means it's going to be awkward still when you have it. It's going to be more awkward now.
So sometimes it makes it worse.
Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And trust is one of the hardest things. Listen, trust is so hard to regain. Mistakes are understood. Human error is human error. We talk about human error within sterile processing, but trust is really hard to regain, especially when it just doesn't need to be lost. Go ahead and have that awkward conversation and move forward. Like, put your heads together and move forward. So I
think, Karen, I think you're right there. I always think about the early days when you're in SPD, right? And you got this doc that's always the grumpy at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? And he's always the first case for some reason, and for no matter what's going to go wrong will go wrong at that case, right? And then you got to call up and tell the circulator, no one sterilized his instruments last night, something, right? Or it's missing, If you let that go to 7:30 and he walks in that room, the patient's on the table, then it's a 10 times bigger problem than you just call and circulate and say, hey, we have a problem right now at 7 o'clock in the morning. They can improvise, they can do things. If once they trust you and they feel that you're part of their team, sometimes they'll actually neutralize that problem for you, and it won't be because you gave them the heads up, like Karen said. They can go into management mode, and they're used to management mode, right? They're in the OR, but everything goes smooth in there. So they're used to managing crisis. So give them that crisis early and let them get to work, because if you let it drag, then they just blame it on you because you just lack of integrity there, really.
You are so right, Chad. We call that speaking truth to power. You're giving them that direct information so that they're not surprised. You take full ownership circumstance, whether you're in the leadership position or not. In that moment, in that pivotal time, you represent the entire team. So just take the hit. take the hit, figure out the solution. Because once you're able to get that person in that power position to vouch for you, to vouch for your integrity, he or she's going to be a significant neutralizer should something nuclear arise. Here's front line. Nope. We're gonna take that down a notch. You're talking to my folks in SPD. So it's always great when you have that power broker on the team.
Yep.
And one thing I want people to know, like anytime you're implementing something, a lot of times people feel like, like again, that cover thing, when you're testing the changes, or say you come up with an idea and something in that idea is not quite right, like don't be afraid of that. That's part of making sure what you're implementing is working. And so, like, how do we, if we do, how do we recommend, how do you test the changes, and what are some ways that you recommend others out there in SPD world can test some of the changes?
Document, right? You I said you like 4 times. I get a little tired.
Okay.
I think we're losing the way in there. There he is.
We missed part of your response.
Oh, because I had a phone call come in. So I was saying it's important that you tell your own story. You can't allow someone to tell it for you. And keep records, right? Keep records, track those matrices that you were all talking about. If you had a bad month, your KPI dipped a little bit, you want to monitor that and track it for historical purposes. And don't be afraid to share your wins, right? It's easy for someone to tell your department or for you to tell a technician, if you will, what they've done wrong, but don't be afraid to tell them what they've done right. And once you begin to tell them what they've done right, I'm sure the scale is going to tip in a way of, hey, you do more things the right way according to best practice than the human error. So tell your story.
Yep. Monitor, like you said, documentation, but monitor it and then optimize it, right? So as you monitor it, you can kind of see those trends starting to work a certain way, or if they're going the wrong way, then you need to, add a little more, speed to it. But just monitor it and then, like say, optimize and continue to work on it. So it'll go the right direction if you're caring.
All right, we're going to take another short break before we come back and get ready so we can all go and look at the debate. Definitely want to say, just like we're looking at processes here, I encourage everyone to look at processes just in every area, period. Look at the processes, vet the processes, what works, what doesn't work, and don't be afraid to tweak anything if it's not working. But again, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. We really will. We'll be right back. Yes, we will.
It wasn't my fault that time.
Lost time is never found again. CS Assist specializes in providing CS leadership more time to focus all resources on patient care and safety by assisting with your compliance needs. We understand that there are many department recommendations and even more regulatory compliance mandates to adhere to and to follow. We focus on the constant changes in staff education and regulatory compliance, allowing you to focus on the daily operational needs. And realizing the value of time, we partner with you to alleviate risk in all areas. We offer a variety of support packages that will assist you with everything from CSPD specific policies and procedures to a fully customized survey readiness plan for your team. For more information regarding our consulting retainer options, our qualitative and quantitative reporting tools and online documentation, please give us a call at 1-833-CSP-ASST, 1-833-277-2778.
And we're back. Actually, I see we're joined by one other individual because we did this show early due to the debate. So I am going to process improvements. I want to read what Bill said. Process improvements are essential to being successful. In the SPD and the OR, it's essential to have the right people a part of the process. Oh, incorporate 90-day tests of change, document and establish teams on service side and customer side. Be transparent and honest with expectations. Do the go touch. Do the go touch, go feel, go smell, go see, the go-go's. Is anybody familiar with the go-go's?
Maybe the
Not.
one early on I was, but not. I'm learning this one. I like it though. Go touch, go feel, go smell.
Yeah, I think this is him.
Good. Yeah.
The go-go's. Okay, yeah. When I think that's good though. That's good. I will actually. I'm gonna ask him and connect with him and find out. Tell me more about the go-go's. When I hear the go-go's, I actually think about music, but I want to change
Me
that.
too.
Yeah, I think about music. Hey, even though it's only a few moments, Mark, I'm so sorry. We actually went so that we didn't compete with the debate. We came on early. And so everybody, this is Mark Duro, a consultant, a dynamic subject matter expert within the sterilization field. And we talked about some like different things. What we did talk about though are KPIs today.
Wait,
So,
Mark
go ahead.
wait. Them same hard questions that you pulled out your Rolodex from the first consultant ever. Mark is now here. You're gonna hit Mark hard
With
questions.
some of the same hard questions, I will. Let's do it. He says, Mark, are you ready? Yeah, I see Mark taking notes. Donnie is dipped away, and Mark is taking notes. Mark, can you hear us? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear us. This is what we're going to do while we're waiting on Mark to give us a thumbs up. Chad.
Yes.
Tell us about American Surgical.
All right. I can't hear you. There we go. All right. Well, American Surgical, quick little brief. We are a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. We've been in business since 2006. Basically, we sharpen and repair surgical instruments on site. We repair flexible scopes, rigid scopes. We have a partnership with many companies, even new companies, a company called Novo Surgical, where we sell surgical instrumentation. We are the OEM, basically certified repair center for them, and with Stilly Surgical as well. Probably one of the first ever manufacturer of instrumentation, high quality. We are the OEM for them, basically the third party repair center for them as well. So it's what we do. We try to play with the big players, but we focused in the government facilities for the last 15 years or 12 years, I should say. And now we're really going to work in the commercial sector. So we're trying to grow and get bigger. And we appreciate SIPS and you, Sharon, for giving us the opportunity to have a voice here.
Absolutely. We appreciate SIPS and CSSS. We appreciate what you do, and we appreciate the heart behind what you do. You know, sometimes we're so busy looking at the dollar, and the dollar is well worth it in your case, but we forget about just some of the relationships and some of the integrity and character that comes actually with good, solid business. And
and I didn't want to make it too much about that, but that is really what it was. And so our company was founded, just kind of give you guys a little story about it. It was founded as a Vietnam veteran, had two Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. Basically was, basically disabled from that, and was one of the original guys that started in this business. And we lost him to cancer last year in December. And so the dream of American Surgical was really at that point in time he wanted to make a difference with veterans. He wanted to make a difference in the healthcare system. And so that's kind of our mission. You know, we pay attention to the dollars and cents, but what really drives us is every veteran out there needs to have the best possible healthcare you can possibly get. And in American Surgical, we are dedicated to that. Not saying that we don't pay attention to the commercial sector and the hospitals there. We're there too, but that was really what our vision was. And we started there, and we've grown a lot. And so we're excited about the next chapter here to carry on his legacy.
Excellent. Well, Mark, you've joined us, and fair is as fair does. I want to allow you to speak and have some opportunity to be sure the people hear you again. Thank you for joining us again. I'm going to ask you a question that I asked them. Why process improvement? It's a buzzword, but why do we focus on process improvement in SPD? Like, why do we focus on it? For what?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
All right, good. I just want to make sure I had that glitch in the beginning. As a consultant, so for those that don't know me, my name is Mark Dorr. I'm the Director of Education for Sterile Processing Direct. We supply basically all niche products to sterile processing. That's, BIs, CIs, cleaning brushes, stuff like that. But one of my functions is that I provide audits to healthcare facilities. And I think this might lead into some of your other questions later, but as I go from one facility to another, I see a lot of some places that will have standardization, but then there are others that do not. So like you can go to one facility and you may pack a major basic tray in a particular way. And one of the things that we want to do is speed up OR turnover. So part of that is in the setup in the kit. So if you have technician A, B, and C assembling kits all differently and they go to the operating room, it could take a little longer for them to unpack the kit and set it up on the table. So standardizing processes helps a lot in that sense, and that's just one of the tasks that I see, so, and that goes down to packaging, it goes down to loading the sterilizer. Even in the same facility, in one facility, you could have 3 people wrapping different ways. So there needs to be some standardization because overall, when you look at, process improvement, we're trying to streamline things, make it easier for our customers, which is the operating room. So that's my 2 cents there.
Yep. And to add to that, I think Luane talked about this, and as Mark's going on, he's talking about the waste, right? The waste after that. That kit is proficient. There's less waste, less carbon input. There's less time, less disposable cost there too. I think that's another end result to what Mark's talking about there.
And to take that even further, there are some companies out there that will do analysis of your tray setup. They'll hang out in the operating room. They'll see what the surgeons are using, what they're not using, and then give you a report and say, hey, you know what? You might want to get rid of all these instruments or package them separately or differently because it's just adding more time and waste to your process.
Wow, that's good. Not only for the turnover, but also just inventory that just hits in different areas. Wow, that's really good. So that's why process improvement that actually is putting money, allowing people to use those funds for other areas. And so that's a great thing. We did ask, what do you think some of the best practices are as far as process improvement? Like, is it the Lean Six Sigma? Is it like, what are some of the best practices you've seen? Well, that's a methodology, but what's some of the best practices you've seen for process improvement? Mark.
Is that me? Okay.
Yeah, that's all you.
It's on me. So, one thing that I see is when you, especially in the field, when you're going through sterile processing departments, you look at the workflow. And a lot of times when you look at that workflow, it makes no sense at all. So the facility that I used to work at up in Boston, when I first started there, the layout was, it was not conducive for processing. Sterilizers were on one side of the department, the washers were on another. They put a third autoclave wherever they could fit one because there was no space. So the workflow did not make sense. We had technicians bumping into each other. And how many people have the CS tattoos, with the burn on the shoulder or the cut in the leg from the sterilizer cart? And we had technicians that were actually frustrated being there because it was so tight and cramped, and the workflow made no sense, which led to finger pointing. How come I'm the only one who does this? And how come nobody else does that? So we ended up listening to all complaints from the technicians. And when we built our new department, we wanted to implement that into our workflow to make sure that all of the issues that the technicians were having were not present. So eliminating phones, putting a linear workflow in. So you go decontam, prep and pack, sterile storage with all kinds of safeguards in between. Now, a lot of hospitals don't have that luxury of being able to go through that. However, you can look at your current workflow and try to change it. You know what I mean? Make it a little bit more conducive for processing.
All right. Listen, guys, it is a little bit after 9. Normally we start at 9 p.m. Mark, again, I'm glad that you joined us. I wanted to give you an opportunity to weigh in on these process improvements, and those are awesome answers. Just wanted to say right now, before we go away, I want Lawayne, if you could let us know a little bit about CS Assist and let us know how people can contact you. Same thing with you, Mark Duro. Same thing with you, Chad Bliss. And then we are going to go, and I just want to encourage everyone to go and look at the debate and look at the key issues. I know we all have emotions and who we like and who we don't like and things like that. Let's look at some of the issues, and move forward from there. But right now, if you can let us know, Lawayne, then Mark, then Chad, a little bit about you and how we can reach you.
Absolutely. So CS Assist, you can find us at mycsassist.com. We're a solution-based company. Not only are we consultants, but we have amazing online and digital resources, including landscape management. What's landscape management? Many hospitals can afford a consultant to come on site for 40 hours a week for a 13-week contract. We have solutions for your budget. We have solutions for different areas in healthcare, not just traditional SPD. Many of our clients are dental facilities, veterinary clinics, educational institutions. So we offer a broad range of solutions and tools for everything sterile processing, not just core, as we call it core SPD. So mycsassist.com. For more information, please contact me directly or email Sharon, call Sharon, and I'll be sure to return your inquiry.
Yeah, I would definitely connect them with you. Absolutely, I will. How about you, Mark? Tell us a little bit about you and how individuals can connect with you.
My company is sterileprocessingdirect.com. You can find us on the internet. You can reach me, mduro, at sterileprocessingdirect.com. We provide services for sterile processing departments, for dental and other areas where cleaning, sterilization, high-level disinfection take place. The products that we have are specifically geared and tested for sterile processing only. As you may know, I had a company prior to this a few years back, and this is the 2.0 version, and I have to tell you, it's a lot better because we have some really, really neat products.
Excellent. Excellent. I look forward to hearing more about that, and definitely go to sterileprocessingdirect.com and check out Mark Duro. How about you, Chad?
I say Chad Bliss with American Surgical Instrument Repair. You can reach us at americansurgicalinstrumentrepair.com. It's a long name, but gets results. We are preventative maintenance, on-site sharpening, repair of all equipment. Add some real good insight to the cost repair and preventative maintenance there too. Like I said, that's how you can reach us, or you can reach me at chad.bliss@american-surgical.com.
All right, listen, if there's anything, I know that there's so many things that were said good here. And thank you so much, SPD World, for weighing in with the comments and sharing some of the QAs and the processes that you all do. If you want to connect with any of these individuals, the information is there. If you, for whatever reason, can't get that information, reach out to me at info@ucdileadership.com. Let me know the date and the segment, and I promise you I will get that information to you ASAP. Now, there is a link inside of there that says all of the issues. Please do your responsible duty. Find out so that you can vote informed. The things that line up with your core values. Let's just look at the processes. You know, I'll be so glad when we're out of this election season, because I just feel like peace is the best way, and there's just so much anger. And I just say no anger. Hashtag stamp it out. All right. Thanks again. This has been Sharon Combs with Knowledge and Nonsense, and have a great evening.